Welcome everyone to our episode 31st of our second season for cultivating a new generation. In today's episode, we are going to start a new section about the science, the research, and the body and the mind healing. So our topic today is going to be heal your brain and body with food. We are going to dive deep into the nutrition science of how can we improve our mental health and of course the body physical ailments and how to avoid having a chronic disease. The article that was and is going to be discussed in today's episode, it's published by Savisnao and Drigas in 2021, and the title is Nutrition in Mental and Physical Health. The journal that you can find the article is Technium Social Sciences Journal. The aim of the review presented in that article is to explore the healthy nutrition and benefits of individuals with all the science that we know so far and with the research that resulted in most of the major themes describing, of course, basic ingredients of the daily intake for a healthy and a strong body and mind. So we are going to start with malnutrition and how it happens. Malnutrition and poor diets rank as risk factors for disability, and we can know that it can be a body ailment or it can be a mental health problem. In rich countries, consumption of unhealthy food is regarded as a major risk for diseases. We have talked about this processed food and all the added sugars that have been impacting us is creating the most threatening epidemic in the world. Therefore, the lack of essential nutrients remains a risk factor for children mortality in many poor countries. At the same time, in other countries, it is characterized by the opposite, which is obesity. Poor diets are common and complex. They have a multifactorial system that we are going to start diving deep, starting with the review of trace elements and minerals. In 2012, Millie, Chap, and G, those researchers make an important iron deficiency in children, which prove that low levels of ferritin in children with cognitive and learning disabilities led to them being given ferritin serum during their admission to a neurological clinic. Ferritin supplements have shown some improvement in children's behavior, so its lack was related to attention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. Most of the reports come from the countries of Middle East, Turkey, Iran, and USA. Another important trace element, of course, for the brain health is zinc, as it acts as a cofactor for dopamine metabolism. Two trials presented information, one with iron supplements and the other one with methylphenidate, which is a compound that needs zinc as a cofactor. So those two substances research had reported significant benefits. In 2013, Arnold, Hort, and Loftus investigated the importance of amino acid and trace elements in the body. Children with attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, what is characterized as ADHD, have a lack of amino acids. More specifically, 34% of a sample of children with ADHD appear to have a magnesium deficiency. Amino acids such as tryptophan, tyrosine, and phenylalanine are essential for the production of neurotransmitters. They are the precursors of the neurotransmitters. So insufficient iron is usual to children with ADHD, sorry, and it is an important coenzyme for the production of catecholamines. In a survey, 73 girls with ADHD taking iron supplements improved in verbal learnings and memory. How can we relate that to what we have reviewed before in the nutrition podcast that we have performed? Understanding the biochemistry of these cofactors and these metals in particular, it is extremely important because they enhance the speed of the enzymes that are going to produce many neurotransmitters. And iron, as we know, is also implied in the oxygen fixation and the oxygen transportation system so that our brain can be accurately oxygenated. So if we don't have proper levels of iron, we are going to have problems in attention, hyperactivity, or learning skills, as we mentioned. And of course, the 3 amino acids that we mentioned here, which are the aromatic amino acids, are extremely important for mental health because they are all precursors of many neurotransmitters that we need in order to have a cognitive healthy brain. Sandstedt in 1986, imagine that, it's almost 35 years ago, presented a brief history of the influence of trace elements on brain development and function. Elevated levels of lead in the environment, such as water, have been shown to cause many problems in children and adults. Children exposed to lead have low IQ, attention deficits, and mercury is the second metal that is associated with trace elements affecting the nervous system. The fetuses of pregnant women that ate fishes which contain mercury were severely affected. Risk of injury from mercury include symptoms of ataxia, confusion, poor vision and hearing, violence, and even death. Iodine associated with brain injury because of the deficiency of this kind of element of mineral. A typical example is maternal deficiency during gestation that will affect the development of the fetal brain. Cobalt is the fourth trace element, which is part of cobalamin, which is vitamin B12, and the deficiency of this mineral has been linked to anemia and brain dysfunction. Furthermore, iron and ferritin levels related to dopaminergic neurons and consequently their lack was related to bad mood. The lack of copper associated also with the lack of myelin. Having lack of these kind of minerals and metals and the excess of these metals is extremely important, and we can be suspicious about with the symptoms. So not everything has to be fixed with a pill of antidepressants, which are going to cause much more damage. We need to find out what our children are being exposed to or what is the diet being mostly based off. So in 2012, Torres and Vega agree with the above findings of these metals, and above that, lack of nutrients such as amino acids and trace elements have serious negative effects on the development of parietal system that controls emotions, cognitive and motor functions. Just pay attention to this. We are having here emotions, cognitive skills, which is learning, and motor functions. So that is coordination and movement. Basic trace elements such as iron, zinc, copper, and selenium are cofactors in various enzymes involved in metabolic and antioxidant functions. and they are essential for the synthesis of catecholamines. They also help to protect free radicals and and reduce oxidative stress. So we need these kind of trace elements that are going to simplify our lives by interacting with the enzymes that we have in our bodies, with those metabolic functions that are going to protect and shield our brains, as well as speed up the reactions to produce more neurotransmitters. Imbalances at these levels are associated with diseases such as Parkinson and Alzheimer, as well as depression, anxiety, attention deficit, and poor memory. So many mental illnesses and many neurodegenerative diseases are listed here. So we have to pay attention to these kind of minerals that are going to help us to have a balance in our brains. I will repeat these elements: iron, zinc, copper, and selenium are extremely important cofactors. Vitamins and fatty acids, what do they found in those research areas? More specifically, B12 deficiency causes anemia. We know that already since a long time ago, and that will lead to an increase of homocysteine, and thus increase in the risk of cardiovascular and cerebral diseases. Vitamin deficiency leads to damage to the nervous system. Vitamin B12 and omega-3, in combination with the restriction of the consumption of sugar, sweeteners, artificial sweeteners, pay attention. So they are not healthy. They are just fake sugar. They are artificial sugars, and they are impacting your mental health and the absorption of vitamins. Food with pigments, such as any processed food, and are recommended to improve behavior. So restriction on the consumption of sugar, sweeteners, food with pigments, which is all the processed food, all the things that you can be packaged with artificial colors, they are really dangerous for your mental health and of course for children. So pay attention to that whenever you buy things from processed food brands. Now in 2006, Schleitoff researched whether supplementation of vitamin D can help patients with congestive heart failure. There was the hypothesis that low vitamin D status may contribute to pathogenesis and symptoms of this chronic disease. 123 patients who took place in the study were recruited at the Heart and Diabetes Center of Nordrhein-Westfalen, Germany. They submitted in medical treatment was conducted for 9 months, and they were divided in 2 groups. The intervention group that had vitamin D, the control group that didn't receive vitamin D. The results of that present clinical trial show that supplement with vitamin D increase the cytokine as well as suppress the parathyroid hormone. These findings are very important because the cytokines are an anti-inflammatory protein that seem to have important cardioprotective actions, and the increased serum levels of parathyroid hormone adversely affect the heart problems. So they reduce the inflammatory cytokines as well as the parathyroid hormone that is going to also predispose you to have a heart problem. Vitamin B12 in early childhood, its lack produces problems in memory. Again, I repeat, vitamin B12 in early childhood has problems or is associated with problems when it is not in the proper amounts in memory, attention, learning, and executive functions. Finally, the potential role of other micronutrients such as folate, riboflavin, pyridoxine, and choline need to be examined as they may influence both vitamin B12 metabolism and cognitive development. Where can we find all these vitamins? Well, they are all from the complex B vitamins, which are hydrosoluble or water soluble vitamins. We can find them in most of the dairy products, meats, and of course, in all the green vegetables. Vitamin A cannot be omitted. At this point, the research of Yang et al. In 2018 made an experiment with the aim to examine the effects of retinoic acid on hypoxic ischemic brain damage, the most common central nervous system disease in the neonatal period and that has a poor prognosis. The target of the present study was performed on rats, and the mechanism that was analyzed was the apoptosis in the hippocampus to pathological damage of the hypoxic ischemic brain damage in newborns. The result of the research shed light on the fact that there are disorders in learning and spatial memory in the group that had a lack of vitamin A, as well as greater apoptosis rhythm of the hippocampus in this group. The growth of the messenger RNA protein in the group with sufficient vitamin E was also emphasized. How can they, or what does this mean? It means that the precursor, which is the messenger RNA, to produce much better compounds of the retinoic acids was observed in the people that was supplemented with vitamin E. The above data signal the direct correlation of the hypoxic ischemic brain damage with the lack of vitamin A, thus making it necessary to administer appropriate doses of vitamin E in this case. So if we also have to or want to have a much healthier brain, we need vitamin A, as we mentioned the other minerals and the complex B vitamins. Pyridoxine normalizes serotonin levels, thus improving neurological diseases such as depression and many types of diseases. Pyridoxine is one of the vitamins B. In addition, it is emphasized that pyridoxine supplements reduce aggressive behavior. However, the question arises as to whether long-term use of vitamin B6 is safe. Most of these kind of vitamins are safe in terms of not having an excess, which can be just having a proper combination of elements, as we mentioned, the dairy products, the meats, and of course the green vegetables. And you can supplement on that whenever you have stressful days or high demanding mental days that you are going to have. So in addition to that, we need to pay attention that these vitamins are related to many mental disorders such as depression, anxiety, and poor attention skills. Lange in 2007 agrees that vitamins function as essential nutrients involved in the normal development and functions of the central nervous system. It can even be assumed that vitamin deficiency could contribute to disorder such as, again, pay attention, attention deficit disorder. That's why I said pay attention. Various vitamins have been suggested to be involved in the pathogenesis of this disorder, which are deficiency, again, many deficiencies of these vitamins is related to the attention deficit disorder. Vitamins A, B2, B3, B6, B9, B12, D, and E. So pretty much the complex B vitamins and the fat-soluble vitamins A, D, and E. Now, in 2015, Patrick and Ames point out that serotonin regulates attention deficit, hyperactivity disorder, and impulsive behavior, social cognition, and decision making. How do you regulate serotonin levels? We need the amino acid tryptophan, and we need good amounts of sleep, sunlight, and interaction with other people. So just pay attention to those kind of activities that you can do in order to improve your your serotonin levels, sorry. Its reduction in typical individuals causes memory problems and reduced learning abilities. So whenever we have low levels of serotonin, we can have memory problems and reduce learning abilities. Research suggests that mechanisms by which synthesis, release, and function of serotonin in the brain are regulated by vitamin D and omega-3 fats. Again, vitamin D is related to serotonin production, and omega-3 fats that you can find them in all the blue fishes, which are salmon, sardines, tuna, and also avocado, and many of the green vegetables. The elements that are necessary for the symptoms of carelessness, impulsivity, and hyperactivity, more specifically, fatty acids species such as eicopentanoic acid or EPA and eicosanoic acid DHA inhibit depression, regulate serotonin levels, and improve behaviors. Where can you find these kind of fatty acids? Again, green vegetables, nuts, almonds, peanuts, and of course, the blue fishes. Freeman et al. In 2018 explored the different type of sugar like glucose and fructose symptoms. So what are we going to see here in the research of sugar? Furthermore, they explain that sugar addiction and how sugar is metabolized. They were looking at glucose and fructose separately, and it was observed that fructose is more dangerous than glucose due to the need of increased food intake and therefore fat, as well as the risk of diabetes or Alzheimer's. So remember, fructose. Where can we find products with fructose? Many of the processed food things, donuts, any kind of cookies and cakes have fructose. Many of the beverages that children mainly use as soft drinks have fructose. All of these kind of sodas and many of these small milks that you can give them for lunch are high in fructose. So just pay attention to that, because you are making them more harm than good. So about sugar addiction, it seems to happen very often and is parallel with drug addiction. Be careful here, because we are predisposing our children to have more addictions in the future with the addiction of sugars. So just try to eliminate as much as possible all of those added sugars, including the ones that say zero sugar, because mainly most of the products that have this zero sugar ad or label, they have artificial sweeteners. The added sugars sweeten the food and are used to preserve food. It is well known that sugar consumption increases problems such as obesity, dental caries, and cardiovascular risks, among the other problems in mental health. The aim of this paper that was written by Fielder et al. Was in 2017 reviews the evidence on the health effects in infants, children, and adolescents. Infants, as well as early childhood who intake a lot of sugar, are likely to consume the sweet taste of food in childhood and adolescence. This fact is related to increased incidence of dental caries, adiposity, cardiovascular disease, and type 2 diabetes. So we are just predisposing our children to be to have chronic diseases early on in their adolescent years, or even worse, we are creating lazy, foggy, or impaired brain health in them. White and Woolrich in 1995 reviewed the scientific evidence about the relationship between sugar, behavior, and cognitive function. The first hypothesis that sucrose hurts the behavior was in 1922. Imagine that. 1922, almost 100 years ago. That's a lot of time. In the past, sugar was associated with fatigue syndrome, and this article is considered the relation between sucrose hyperactivity and aggressive behavior. The first theory says that refined sugar challenge allergic responses. That is no surprise that we are having a lot more autoimmune diseases right now. The second theory explains that sugar functional reactive hypoglycemia. Nevertheless, clinical investigations have not demonstrated a significant effect of sucrose with hyperactivity because studies mostly use methods similar to those used in investigating the effects of food additives and preservatives. Secondly, the writers hypothesized that glucose can influence the central nervous system. More specifically, the glucose seems to be related to the brain area that is responsible for memory. That's why we have a lot of children with problems of memory and hyperactivity, and of course, many learning problems. The hippocampus may be affected by glucose, and the latest case of research in sedation in infants. Sugar increases the serotonin in the brain, which can influence sleep induction. That's why also we have a new generation of children that are more sedentary. So because we are provoking that with the kind of sugar addiction. The research of Lee, Blondin, Milte, and Sin in 2011 examines the possible interaction of sleep, diet, and hyperactivity. The study was conducted in South Australia and examined 91 children aged 6 to 13 years old. The tool used was a questionnaire of the frequency of food consumption by the Victorian Cancer Council. It should also be noted that energy and carbohydrate intake from soft drinks, here we are, were calculated separately with FoodWorks Professional. Sleep was measured with the sleep disorder scale for children, and the main consumption of the study was that the children with sleep disorder consume more fat, more carbohydrates, and sugars. More specifically, sugar consumption was associated with night sweats and respiratory disorders. So we are not only damaging the brain, we are also disrupting sleeping patterns, and we are also predisposing them to respiratory disorders. So just stay away from these kind of sugars. Nutrition and hormones. Gomez Pinilla in 2008 presented a study that refers to several gun hormones like leptin, ghrelin, and insulin that enter the brain or are produced in the brain and influence cognitive ability. We have mentioned these hunger hormones in many videos, podcasts, and transmissions. It is not surprising that visceral signals are essential factors for the treatment of psychiatric disorders. The brain consumes an immense amount of energy relative to the rest of the body. Thus, the food that is taken is extremely important. More specific, there are many components for the cognitive functions. Omega-3 fatty acids, again, mentioning them, are essential for normal brain functions, and the lack of them leads to reduced learning and memory. Epidemiological studies indicate that trans food and saturated fat adversely affect cognition. Where can we find these trans fats or the saturated fats? Again, in processed food. So stay away from almost anything that is packaged. If you live in a country where you have availability of organic food or more real food without the packages, just stick to that, because we have known that those are the healthiest ways to eat. So folic acid in combination with vitamin B has been shown to be effective at preventing dementia and depression. The antioxidant food, such as vitamin E, curcumin, and micronutrients that are contained in spinach, broccoli, and potatoes, help to the homeostasis of this vitamin E. Finally, the effects of diet on mental health can be transmitted across generations. What does this mean? This means that we are creating epigenetic marks that can help us to alleviate many of the symptoms in future generations just by instructing our children to eat less sugar and educating them. Remember that they are your example. If you start reducing these kind of sugars and you start cleaning your cabinets and all of the things in your house that are packaged, they are going to see that example and they won't become anxious about consuming those products. The study of Rachel and Rank in 2017 highlighted the negative impact of junk food on brain function. The neurodevelopment processes are critical for brain synapses. For this reason, the eating habits are extremely important during the adolescence. The adolescents used to consume a lot of junk food. This habit causes specific neurobiological changes that can impact the development of frontostriatal and frontotemporal neurocircuitry. So that means that they are creating damage in one of the most important regions that is associated to the prefrontal cortex, and they won't be able to solve problems, to have assertive skills, and to have more resiliency in terms of their mood. The vegan and vegetarian diets seem to have positive results for health and disease. More specifically, this type of diet contributes to weight and metabolic status. Of course, they regulate glucose, insulin, plasma lipids, as well as inflammatory markers. So what does this mean? You can just either go to the full spectrum of become vegan or vegetarian, or just try to avoid as much as possible the meats, not the food, the fish, the blue fish. Although in recent surveys, 80% of women found a direct relationship between a vegan diet and a balanced mood. The nutrients that are taken with this kind of diet are vitamin K, vitamin C, magnesium, and others. On the other hand, there is some risk of nutrient deficiencies in this kind of diet, such as vitamin B12, iron, and ferritin, which are very important for cognition, memory, and homocysteine balance. But you can just supplement them or not go all the full spectrum. in terms of having still the blue fishes in your diet. Finally, plant-based diets are linked to a specific microbial profile, and some vegan gut microbial characteristics have found in obese people, which improve lipid metabolism and intestinal inflammation. So what are they saying here? All of the vegan diet or increasing the amount of vegetables and fruits in your diet, it's going to help you to change your microbiota and to have less symptoms in terms of intestinal inflammation or any related gut disease. Vitamins have anti-inflammatory actions, as we have seen, and they protect you against heart problems. They also help to enhance memory and attention. Children of a vitamin-rich diet, it doesn't say that you have to supplement them unless you are in a country where you really doubt about the origin of the products that they are consuming. And if that is the case, just try to supplement them with the kind of vitamins that we mentioned. Children of vitamin-rich diet have better cognitive and executive functions, unlike the children that have sugary foods, which have been accused of being addictive and causing problems in the mind and the body, as we reviewed. Nutrition, as you have seen along this episode of the podcast, with a variety of trace elements, minerals, contributes to increasing memory, verbal learning, and reducing the chances of hyperactivity and parsimony. It also reduces the incidence of disease in general, anemia, anxiety, and memory loss. So if we really care about what we eat, if we invest some more time, that is not too much, if you just read the labels and start becoming more attuned to the ingredients of the food that you're consuming, you will have a strong body and mind without the dependency on any pharmacological aid or any, let alone psychiatric pills. So just pay attention on what you eat. Be more mindful when eating, sleep, and exercise. Pretty much go back to the basics, and you will be much healthier and much more mentally quick, fast, and with a clear mind. Thank you for listening. And this is the beginning of a section that has really enlightened me in terms of giving you more information with deeper knowledge for your overall health. Thank you, and we will be listening to each other on our next episode. Bye.